The air tasted like dust and ozone, a flavour Howard Carter had grown intimately familiar with over the last decade. It was the taste of the past, the flavour of a world that had gone silent. He knelt in the deep, ochre-coloured trench, the sun beating down mercilessly on the shattered concrete canyons of what the new cartographers had designated simply as Ruins Alpha. The city had once been a titan, a sprawling nexus of glass and light. Now it was a tomb, its towers reduced to broken teeth, gnawing at the sickly yellow sky. "Anything, Howard?" A voice, tinny and slightly distorted, crackled over the comms unit and clipped to his collar. Howard didn't look up. He scraped away a layer of fine, dry earth with a small, stiff brush, the same type of tool his namesake, the original Howard Carter, had used over a century ago in the sands of Egypt. The irony wasn't lost on him. The original had sought treasures of gold and gods. He sought fragments of forgotten logic, scraps of the mundane. "Just more slag on ya," he replied, his voice raspy. "Level 5A is solid fusion melt, looks like a direct hit from the southeast quadrant. Another couple of meters and we hit the pre-collapsed bedrock. Nothing of interest down there." He paused, adjusting the angle of the trench light. The light source was a solar-charged, low-power LED array, a marvel of salvaged and repurposed technology in this fragile, recovering world. The power grid of the old world, that incomprehensible web of electricity that had fueled everything from thought to flight, had been the first thing to vanish in the Great Silence. When the missiles flew, and the final savage exchange was complete, the grid had failed, taking with it nearly every trace of the digital age. Everything stored in the cloud, that ephemeral library humanity had built, had simply dissolved. The ensuing century, the century of ash, had been defined by cold, darkness, and the agonizing slow crawl back to basic literacy and crop rotation. Humanity survived, but it was a spectral echo of its former self, clinging to life in small, decentralized settlements. Knowledge was the rarest commodity. Anya's voice returned, sharper this time. "Don't give up. The texts are clear. This structure, the rocket lab, as they called it, was centered here. The coordinates we salvaged from the fragmented paper map." "I know the map, Anya," Howard cut in, sighing. The cryptic texts were a collection of tattered, mildewed service manuals from a long-dead municipal heating system, and a fragment of a personal diary, both recovered years ago from a sealed pre-collapsed drainage pipe. Among the gibberish of maintenance logs was a recurring, almost obsessive reference to a secure facility L9 and its final payload delivery system. The combination of secure facility L9 and payload delivery had been interpreted by the fledgling Institute of Pre-Collapse Studies as a probable launch site or a significant research center linked to the end-of-the-century weapons program. Howard grunted and picked up his small shovel. The trench he was in was already deep enough that the sun was only a hazy disk far above. The ruined structure, they estimated, had been a skyscraper, perhaps a corporate headquarters or a university research center. It had been built to last, a testament to the old world's baffling faith in permanence, a quality they now cherished. He began working on the trench wall, shifting from the wide, open chamber he'd been excavating towards the solid concrete foundation of an adjacent room. He struck something hard, metallic and unusually smooth. "Stop," he muttered, dropping the shovel. He reached for the brush and began working furiously, sweeping away decades of fine dust. The surface revealed was dark, uniform, and unnervingly pristine. "I found something," he called up to the surface team. "Not more structural damage. This was like a plate. A solid access panel. Smooth. No seams." For the next 2 hours, the only sound was the scratching of brushes and the rhythmic thump of a small pneumatic chisel they used to clear the surrounding debris. The metal was not a plate. It was a solid reinforced door, perfectly flush with the concrete. It was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, and recessed into the foundation. No hinges were visible, no handle, just a small rectangular indent at shoulder height. "It's armored," Howard reported, running his gloved hand over the chilled surface. "I've seen bunker doors, but this is military grade. Pre-collapse paranoia at its finest." The team spent the rest of the day setting up the heavy-duty, solar-powered carbide drill, another salvaged relic, nursed back to life by the Institute's engineering unit. The work was slow, painstaking, and deafening in the confined space. The goal wasn't to cut the door off its frame, but to drill a borehole large enough to insert a borescope and, hopefully, a charge. As the sun began to dip, casting long skeletal shadows across the ruined city, the drill broke through. A rush of stale, cold air that hadn't been disturbed in perhaps 80 years, poured out. It smelled faintly of minerals and something else, something chemical, like dried adhesive. Howard inserted the borescope, a simple fiber-optic camera, and pressed it against his eye. The light was faint, but he could see. The small circular camera feed showed a short concrete corridor, impeccably clean, leading to another, smaller door. Behind this inner door was a dead control panel. "It's the storage," Howard whispered, forgetting the comms. He relayed the coordinates of the breaching charge. It took 3 attempts and nearly blew out the borescope, but after the first armored plate, the second interior door opened normally, the lock, being electric, having died with its switch. Howard, Anya, and 2 team members, dressed in full hazard gear, entered the vault chamber. It was small, barely 4 meters by 4 meters, and entirely empty, save for one object, a large olive-drab metal cabinet fixed securely to the rear wall. It had been built like a safe. This cabinet too required a breaching charge. The third explosion echoed ominously through the subterranean structure. Behind the breached cabinet door was not a solid wall, but another smaller opening, revealing a medium-sized separate room, the true vault. The air here was even colder, almost sterile. The room was not empty. What made this the find of the century of ash was centered on a single squat metal disc in the middle of the floor. On the desk sat a relic, an old beige computer, a true monster of pre-collapse design. Beside it, tethered to the machine by thick salvaged wires, was a compact, heavy-duty battery unit, still showing a faint, glowing green charge indicator. The machine was on. And taped clumsily to the side of the box was a small, yellowed stick-on paper note. Howard moved first, stepping around the debris of the cabinet door. "The battery," he whispered, pointing to the green light. "It's been running on an absurdly efficient internal cell for more than 100 years. Anya held up her hand. "Don't touch the computer. Don't touch anything. We have no idea what internal power reserves it might have, and if we discharge that battery, we may not be able to reactivate it." The logistics of salvaging, and impossibly recharging such an ancient power cell in their current age were non-existent. This single glowing screen was a fragile window into the forgotten world. They dedicated the next hour to carefully examining the stick-on note, using specialized forensic lamps and microscopic lenses. The writing was faded, done in an unstable marker, but after a painstaking effort, a collective gasp went through the team as the words finally became legible. Howard read them aloud, his voice trembling. "It must be kept safe for the next generations." Anya waved a security member toward a small reinforced steel cupboard set into the wall near the desk. It looked like a fireproof storage unit, sealed with a simple mechanical lock. A few well-placed strikes from a hammer and chisel, used with surgical precision to avoid shaking the delicate content, bent the metal back. Inside, cushioned by ancient, crumbling foam padding, they found a pristine, flat-screen monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse, all still sealed in what looked like original factory packaging. The team worked with the meticulousness of surgeons, preparing for a delicate procedure. The old terminal unit used proprietary, complex plugs, thick, multi-pin connectors that defied the simple logic of modern, salvaged wiring. Yet the components from the cupboard, though newer than the main computer, were designed to connect to it. Using the unique interlocking shapes of the plugs, Howard and his assistant, Maria, painstakingly connected everything. Each click was a moment of profound tension. While Howard and Maria focused on the delicate hardware integration, Anya directed the fourth member of the team, a young Institute scholar named David, to document the entire process. David moved around the chamber, his headlamp casting precise beams, sketching furiously in a thick leather-bound notebook. He drew the room's layout, the specific placement of the desk and cabinet, the strange humming battery unit, and detailed diagrams of every single cable and connection made. No detail was too small. In the century of Ash, a forgotten plug shape could be the key to rebuilding an entire technology. The smooth, seamless integration of the new peripherals into the monstrous old terminal was a testament to the foresight of the person who had sealed this vault. The new flat-screen monitor flickered to life, its display far crisper and brighter than the old terminal had managed. After the initial boot sequence, a series of strange, alien logos and loading bars that spanned nearly 3 minutes of agonizing waiting, the screen settled. It wasn't the stark black terminal with the blinking cursor they had expected. It was a graphical interface, a desktop. It was simple, almost childishly so, but its complexity was a universe away from their current technology. Centered on the screen was a single object, a small, square pictogram, an icon, Howard realized, recalling a fragment of pre-collapsed terminology. It looked like a stylized key. Below it, in a simple block font, was the title, "Click Me." Howard, his hand hovering over the pristine mouse, felt a sweat bead on his brow. The entire history of the world might rest on this single click. Anya, leaning over his shoulder, whispered, "Do it, Howard. Be careful." It took several minutes of intense concentration for Howard to figure out the precise manipulation of the mouse, the delicate calibration required to translate the movement of his hand into the corresponding movement of the arrow on the screen. Finally, trembling with a mix of excitement and fear, he guided the white arrow over the "Click Me" icon. He pressed the left button, the only button that seemed logical, with the absolute minimum of force. The screen flashed, the icon disappeared, and a window filled the screen with moving images on it. When the battery died, they had witnessed 15 minutes of cat videos.